Hello everyone, this is Tyler Davis, and I'm going to be talking about Robert Frost's The Road Not Taken, and man, I love this poem. Robert Frost is amazing. His use of literary devices are so masterfully implemented into his poem that they create an everlasting effect on the reader, and it is his use of these devices that has made his poem so memorable, and the exact reason why I like his so much. Now, I chose this poem because it is, if anything, my favorite of his, and maybe on my top list of favorite poems. But also because there's something about this poem that we all tend to misunderstand, to misinterpret, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to investigate what's up with this poem and why there's a controversy that we tend to overlook. Now, before I get too in-depth with that, I'm going to give a quick synopsis of what the poem's about, and then I'll talk briefly about its structure and how it's made up. Then, lastly, I'll get to my main point, where I'll be talking about the themes of the poem, Robert Frost's choice of diction, his use of diction, and the effect of diction on the poem. Now, sounds like a lot? Well, kind of is. So here I go. So firstly, Robert Frost's poem is about a guy in the woods. He comes to a fork in the road where both roads are equally worn and equally overlaid. Key point there. And both have been trodden with leaves. So the speaker chooses one road, and he tells himself that one day he's going to come back and he's going to revisit the road he didn't take. But then he tells himself, and he realizes that being human, and as we tend to be, he probably and most likely will not come back to this road, and he'll never be able to choose the road he didn't take. And he realizes that in the future, he's going to recall this scene, he's going to recreate it, and he's going to tell it with this differently. And he's going to tell himself, or whoever, that he took the less traveled road. Now, Robert Frost says that this poem is about a friend who, when they would walk in the woods and come about a fork in the road, he would start to fret, and he wouldn't know which way to go. Now, it's interesting, because Robert Frost says this is a tricky poem. Why is it tricky? We'll get to that. So, the poem is pretty standard in the sense that it consists of 4 stanzas of 5 lines with a rhyme pattern of A, B, A, A, B. Very traditional, nothing real special, just very conservative, but still having a lot of meaning. So now to the juicy bits, the good stuff. What does Robert Frost mean by this poem is tricky? Well, we'll get to that right now. In an interview with Robert Frost, Frost says, as stated before, this is a tricky, tricky poem. In a direct quote, he says, "You have to be careful of that one. It's a tricky poem. Very tricky." And he's correct. And it's for the reason of this poem being tricky, that I'm here to talk about. Robert Frost's use of diction, his very specific use of diction, creates 2 different possible meanings of his poem. 2 very different interpretations. And I'll tell you why. Firstly, his choice of diction. He uses 2 words that make the poem so difficult to read, that throw readers off so much without them even really knowing it. I myself didn't even realize it until I read this poem and did some research about a lot. So the 2 words he used that throw readers off are the words sigh and difference. Now, you tell yourself, how are those words so tricky? How do they make the difference? Well, I'll tell you. You can't give meaning to these words. Why? Because, firstly, the speaker doesn't know how the events will turn out. What are you getting at, Tyler? The speaker says, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. The poem is in present tense, in the sense that he comes to the fork in the road. He's going to make a choice. The speaker says that he's going to be telling the event of his choice with a sigh, and that his choice has made all the difference. But the speaker can't say that because those events haven't occurred. He hasn't been to the future where he has recalled these events. And you cannot say that something will be such a way if it has never happened. Common sense. It is these two words that make it so difficult for readers to interpret the poem in a justified manner. It's this choice of diction by Frost that makes it so hard to understand the poem. And that exact reason why he says it's so tricky. Many readers, and the majority of readers, have interpreted the poem in one way, and it is the exact way in which it has made the poem so popular. And interpreting these two words in such a way have led people to believe that the poem's message and main meaning is to take the less traveled road. Wow. Well, firstly, the poem, I'm just going to say, is the road not taken, not the less traveled road, which is often misunderstood. Nowhere in the poem does it say take the less traveled road. It never advises. In fact, the poem says, then took the other as just as fair. The roads were just as fair. They are the same. He then says, that had warned them really about the same. Both were warned about the same. There was no difference. So why is it that people automatically think that there is a difference? Well, it's through their interpretation of those two words. People